In the early years of our relationship, Janine and I regularly went to couples counseling. We had this wonderful therapist named Janet, who was trained at the Gottman Institute, founded by renowned psychologists Drs. John and Julie Gottman. Now, the Gottmans have conducted close to 50 years of empirical research on thousands of couples to identify the critical factors explaining why some relationships endure and last, and others fail and end in divorce. Through their legendary Love Lab at the University of Washington in Seattle, the Gottman research team invited newlywed couples to spend a romantic getaway weekend in a swanky apartment where their every interaction was remotely observed over the course of 24 hours. I know. Yeah, every interaction. Researchers documented the frequency with which each member of the couple made a bid for attention, which is any attempt for positive connection, affirmation, or affection. For example, how'd you sleep last night? What do you want to do for dinner? You won't believe what happened last week, let me tell you. Can you help me with this? You look so nice in that shirt. In turn, researchers recorded the partner's response to every single bid for attention using 3 categories. The partner turned toward their loved ones in ways that were present, attentive, engaged, and empathetic. Great, sure, tell me more, thank you. The partner turned away from their loved one by ignoring them, shutting down, withdrawing. I don't care, whatever. Silence. The partner turned against their loved one by being defensive, criticizing, blaming, and even expressing outright contempt. Just stop, go away, shut up. What's wrong with you? The study involved a follow-up with the couple 6 years later to determine if the observed pattern of responses to bids for attention in the Love Lab were predictors for the stability and longevity of the marriage. The results were astounding. The Gottmans' study showed after 6 years, the couples that stayed married were those that had turned towards one another 86% of the time in the Love Lab, whereas the couples that divorced averaged only 33% of the time, meaning the majority of the time they responded to each other by turning away or against each other's bids for attention. Now, regardless of our marital status, we human beings are highly social creatures wired to relate to one another. In any given day, we make dozens of bids to connect with people, and we respond to as many or more bids from others for our attention. What is our pattern of response? Do we turn towards, away, against? Most importantly, how do we respond to each other in times of conflict, fear, and uncertainty when we feel threatened or unsafe? In Matthew's gospel account of the Annunciation, the origin and genesis of Jesus' incarnation rest on the response of a deeply conflicted Joseph, who has just discovered that the woman he is engaged to marry has become pregnant and not by him. His choices are stark and agonizing. He can turn against Mary, away from her, or towards her. Mosaic law and Jewish custom gave Joseph legitimate grounds upon which to turn against Mary by publicly disgracing and rejecting her for her indiscretion. The outcome of this, unlike the exaggerated claims that she would be stoned, would be to impoverish Mary as a single mother and a social outcast. Yet Matthew tells us that Joseph was chagrined but noble. He was a good, just, and merciful man who wants to spare Mary such humiliation, willing to quietly turn away from her by discreetly divorcing her. But this too was far from ideal, as it would still result in the breaching of their family's legal contract and relationship made in good faith, and would inescapably result in hardship for Mary and the child. Was there a way Joseph could turn towards Mary to salvage the situation without being made a fool? On his own, Joseph could not figure out how to respond to this painful dilemma. Enter God. God appears to Joseph in a dream as an angel to deliver a very clear message. Turn towards Mary. Turn towards Mary. Do not be afraid, and do not hesitate to marry her. Mary's pregnancy is spirit conceived, and she will bear a son named Jesus who will save people from their sins. And this will fulfill what the prophet Isaiah promised so many eons ago, that a young woman, a virgin, will bear a child and name him Emmanuel. God is with us. When Joseph awakes from his dream, he does exactly as the angel commands. He turns toward Mary and goes through with the marriage, fully embracing his role as the adopted rather than the biological father of Jesus, without counting the cost. Now, at this point, I think it's crucial to recognize some of the larger narrative context that Matthew uses to frame Jesus' birth story that strongly influences Joseph's response to his predicament with Mary. Immediately preceding our passage today, Matthew begins his gospel account with a genealogy that goes back 42 generations to establish a direct lineage starting with Abraham all the way through King David, all the way to Joseph, and by extension, Jesus. Now, I know most of us look at genealogies in the Bible and are like, skip, yawn. But this genealogy is really interesting. What's highly unusual about it is that 4 women are named. That never happens. Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and the wife of Uriah, Bathsheba. Now, if you don't remember their stories, here's a really super quick review. Tamar, twice widowed with no children by the first 2 sons of Judah, disguised herself as a prostitute to seduce her father-in-law, having twins by him, in retaliation for his failure to marry his 3rd son to her as promised by law. If you don't believe me, go read Genesis 38 tonight. It's true. Rahab was a Canaanite prostitute that helped the Israelite spies conquer Jericho and enter the Promised Land, having a child with one of them. Ruth, more familiar to most of us, I think, is the Moabite widow who pledges to her mother-in-law Naomi, "Wherever you go, I will go," and beguiles Boaz on the threshing floor, then marries him and has a son. Both Rahab and Boaz are great-grandmothers to King David, who impregnates Bathsheba and then sends her husband to the front lines to be killed so he can have Bathsheba as his wife. Now, each of these 4 matriarchs of Israel, 3 of 4 whom are foreigners and outsiders, have controversial, scandalous liaisons with men that lead to messy and unorthodox family structures. Sound familiar? Yet it is through such a winding lineage, with all of its unexpected twists and turns, that God makes bids to connect with and be in relationship with God's people. Where the world sees shame, God sees opportunity. So when Joseph turns toward a pregnant Mary with acceptance and compassion regarding this highly unconventional arrangement, he does not act alone, but he acts in communion with his ancestors, who, when God so reliably turned towards them, no matter how scandalous or hopeless or depraved their plight, respond with tenacious faith by turning towards God and God's deeply flawed people, together writing the story of salvation that leads directly to Jesus. Jesus' Genesis story, also known as Christmas, is God's ultimate bid for our attention. Situated right smack in the middle of our complicated, shameful family systems, our divided and dysfunctional communities, our chaotic and conflicted world. In Jesus' incarnation, we experience the fullest and deepest manifestation of God's overwhelming commitment and desire to seek us out and be with us and love us in the midst of our human predicament. Jesus' name, as we learn from Matthew's gospel, means he saves. And I think Jesus' brand of salvation is simply about being fully present with us where we are, as we are, whoever we are. Emmanuel, God with us, right here, right now. Christmas shows us that the whole world is God's big, giant love lab, where Emmanuel is our faithful partner, always turning towards us over and over to draw us into closer, deeper relationship in grace, mercy, and love. So St. Paul's, how shall we respond to God's divine overture of Christmas in 2025? And what does that augur for our relationships 6 years or 600 years from now? It's always easier to turn away from or against others, to stay in our safe bubble, especially when we are so anxious, helpless, vulnerable, and in danger. Yet we live in a culture where those in power gloat, revel, and scoff as they turn away and against people, especially the most powerless. And we know this only results in destruction of lives and relationship. When Joseph turns towards Mary, he positions himself in a long line of ancestors who each in turn partnered with God to open the way of salvation amidst a world hell-bent on its own destruction, who each in their own human way proclaimed the good news of Christmas that has been true ever since the beginning of creation. God is with us. God is with us. God always has been. God always will be. Showing us the way of forgiveness and reconciliation in our most troubled and doomed relationships with self, neighbor, stranger, and yes, enemy. And the amazing thing is that every single time we turn toward the one who is ever turning towards us, we give birth anew to Emmanuel, making known the healing, compassionate, loving presence of Christ all around us. In this, we too, along with Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, Mary, and Joseph, we are all bearers of God's salvation for the world.